Sure.
This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for another entertainment podcast. And I have the pleasure of talking today with Michael Lazar. And, one of the great things about doing these podcasts, Michael, is that I get to meet musicians like yourself that I may not have met or heard of previously. Um, some of us have no idea how many people are out there using their talents in their craft. And the only ones that we think of typically are the ones that we hear on the radio or maybe see on TV, or maybe we're lucky enough that one of our friends has heard about Michael Lazar and turns us on to you. So I'm
I
glad
appreciate that.
I'm so glad that you're here. Um, and I know you're in sunny, warm Florida, while many of us are just starting to experience the fall and winter up here in the Northeast. So spread your sunshine and give us a little bit of information about who you are.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you again for having me on your program. I really do appreciate it because it's easy to just kind of assume that the top 40 artists are the only ones out there. I know we know that it's more than just those folks, but it's nice to have the opportunity to be exposed to any audience, so I really do appreciate that.
Sure.
Yeah, of course. Again, my name is Michael Lazar. I am no stranger to the North. I just moved here a year ago from New York City, where I spent 18 years developing everything about myself, my music and everything. And before that, I came from Massachusetts, so even colder. But basically, in a nutshell, it took a long time to release this album of work. I was very involved in the musical theater world. That's actually what brought me to New York City. So I went to New York University to School of the Arts and trained in the musical theater studio, also the classical theater studio while I was there. And that's where my songwriting journey began. But I was also, performing in musicals off Broadway and national tours and things like that. I also, while I was developing my musical theater and singing and performing skills, I was a piano player too. So when I was 8 years old, I started playing piano under a method of learning called the Suzuki method. It's like a Japanese style where you basically learn mostly by hearing and then sort of replicating by repetition and getting it in your body, and then on the notes on the page and more on the music being in your body, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So I did that for 10. Yep, great. So I did that for 10 years, and then I went to New York University. Sorry, I'm kind of bouncing all over my timeline,
It's
but we'll
okay.
get to how it got me to where I am. If I'm confusing, you just say, "Wait, you lost me."
No, you're not.
Okay. All right, that's good. So anyways, it was during like periods that I had off, maybe lunch periods or just empty periods where I didn't have a class, where I started the songwriting aspect of my music. I had written melodies on the piano already, but I hadn't committed them to lyrics or added like my stories to the music. It was mostly just kind of like these melodies that I had developed on the piano. But it was during those off periods and college that I started writing the songs. And throughout my 20s, I was having fun, I was struggling, I was performing in gigs, I was doing that whole thing that New York is sort of like iconic and widely known for, the city of dreams in so many ways. And I really did that. I did it. I really had a wild, good, bad, and crazy time. That's actually one of the tracks off my album. Sort of harkens to a life well lived being one that's full of so much, not just great stuff, but like, highs and lows and things like that. So basically, um, when I was not to like, I'm not trying to get like sad here, but there is like a happy sad thing
Sure.
going on in my album. It's like a balance between the two, with a little bit more on the happy or hopeful side, I believe. But anyways, when I was 30, I had some really terrible things happen to me. I lost my mother, and it was really, really earth shattering for me because she had been dealing with something for a very long time, and it wasn't resolved, and it sort of just ended in a not really happy way. And so I had to go through that. And then there was also some very bizarre experiences that I went through after shortly, like the house that I grew up in exploded. And so everything like the pictures and the furniture and all these things. My parents were separated at that point. So my dad was living in the house I grew up in with his wife. But my mom had lived in the same town. She moved into a different residence, and anyway, it was a lot to deal with all in one year.
Sure.
So as you can imagine, but I also during that time period met the love of my life. So he got me through a lot of it. Um, and there are some feelings of sadness with regards to how little time they had together. They only really got to meet each other a couple times, but they did meet each other, and I do believe that she loved him, from what she could see. So there was a sort of like, I view it as like a baton pass from the love I had from my mom, kind of like went into a different kind of love that I
Sure.
have for Christopher. Um, so that was where 5149 really started, although I didn't really know I was writing the album or anything at the time. I had songs that I had written. The oldest song on the album is about 7 years old. So even though I have a ton of music that I've written before, the album explores really my journey from 30 years old with losing my mom and going through that, and then to finding love and discovering my own power, as an artist, not trying to please people. That's another thing, that the album is sort of a celebration of the sense of freedom that I had from doing something all on my own without anybody's approval. So as an actor, I grew really tired of auditioning, and I just don't feel like I was cut out for that table room environment.
Sure.
It didn't, I don't know. I just didn't really want to be a part of that world. And so I feel like I was able to like rebel from that world and release 5149 to the world. So it was kind of like personal vindication for me. I'm not looking for anything from it, but it felt really good to do it. And
Absolutely.
yeah. So basically, flash forward from 30 to 37, and during that time period, I found a really great survival job. I've had survival jobs like my whole life because I have never, put art and music on the back burner. It's always been something, as you can see, that I keep around me at all times. So I started, and I still do, but I started selling artwork for a really famous photographer. His name is Peter Lick. Um, he's from Australia, and regardless, I found great success selling his photographs in New York City, and so it finally gave me the like financial freedom to invest in sound equipment
Love it.
and keyboards and workstations and speakers and all of that. And so that was like happening at the same time that I was like, I don't need anybody's approval. I can do it myself. And so that's really where 5149 began, having not like tons of money, but enough money to definitely produce music on my own. And so over those 7 years, I crafted an album that explored the ups and downs in life, and has a resolution after all 15 songs, after exploring the good, bad, and crazy sides of life, to stay on the positive side and to acknowledge that life is going to be full of terrible things. It really will. No matter who you are, you're going to face it at one point or another. We're not, none of us are exempt from that, I don't think. We can be lucky in a lot of ways, and I do consider myself lucky, even with what I've gone through. You know,
Sure.
like finding, and gratitude is a huge part of my album, because without gratitude, you don't really have an idea what happiness is, I don't think, because you have to know what bad is in order to appreciate the good. So 5149 is that. It is sort of another way of saying, why don't you choose to live life with the glass half full? So that's the album.
You know, I have to tell you, I read the bio um, that was sent to me, and I knew I had to do this podcast with you for a couple personal reasons. So I'm going to explain those. The first thing is I have another podcast that I do, which is called Avoid the Maze. And it's all about the journey in life, just like your album, that we may think that other people have it so much better. You know, look what he's doing, look what she's doing. They never have to suffer. And look what I've been through. And the reality of it is, we all have those suffering moments. We just adapt to them differently. Okay.
Hmm.
And it's important that we share our stories. Sometimes, you know, it's not the right person to tell the whole story to, but even that partial story, so people can understand who we are, why we do and say the things that we do. And that's going to help you with this album as well as we explore that. Um, I am so proud of what I have read and how far you have come, because you've had lots of obstacles, but you had that dream. Okay.
Hmm.
And that to me is what gives you that um, purpose to get up every morning and say, yeah,
Definitely.
I'm going to do it again. So for all of you listening, I really do think that Michael Lazar is going to make it with this album. And I think there's a lot more in the future, but we have to realize it's hard work, especially after the pandemic, because,
It's so hard.
you know,
And social media is a constant, I don't know if I can, I'm not going to swear, but it's a mind screw.
yeah,
Like it really is, because you can feel like you're taking so many strides at becoming somebody or something. And then if you don't get enough likes, it somehow diminishes what you're doing, or that's the pitfall that you can,
right.
you know, be subject to. I feel it, you know, even still, like I'm so happy with the whole campaign that I've had with promoting my record, but like that part of it, it makes it really difficult
Well, and it
sometimes.
becomes difficult when people on the sidelines um, try to second guess, you know, well, so how many likes did you get on that?
And that
You know,
dictates how good or bad the product is, I
yeah,
guess.
and really it doesn't, because how many of us just push that like button just because we want people to say, "Oh, I saw it. Maybe I didn't listen. Maybe I didn't read it." Okay.
Right.
Um, so I know as a podcaster, yeah, do I look at the numbers? Yes, I need to, but I don't dwell on the numbers. What I dwell on is how it worked between me and our guest. And that's all that really matters in the end. So I know that's
I love it.
how you're going to do well. So as I said to you, when I went to look up the album, I just Googled 51-49 and I found all these scientific things. So tell me how you came up with the name of the album, first of all.
Well, it's funny because 5149 is not a track name on the album. I do have like I'm already sort of working on my next chapter of music. I'm trying not to too much while I'm still involved with my 5149, you know, release, but I can't help but sometimes kind of move forward
Sure.
a little bit on the sides. So, you know, I one of the tracks on my next project is called Toll on You. And there's a line in it. So I said life was better on the borderline, living at 5149, but that was then, look at me now. So, I mean, I reference it for sure in my music, but there's no name called 5149 on the album or anything. And, you know, a lot of times you'll see on an album that the title of the album is
Right.
also a track name. I think the reason why it's called 5149, and I know that it came to me I think a few years ago, probably 3 years ago now, the album title sort of came into being, and it happened in discussion, most likely, as if I can remember right, with Chris. And I was looking at the body of work that I had on my computer and the songs that were finished and pretty much done and ready to be sent out to be mastered. And I think I just evaluated the tone of them. And I looked at myself as a person after having gone through certain things and come out of it feeling in a lot of ways better. That I wanted the message of the album to be hope, but I wanted to be honest with my listeners about the sadness and the challenges that life will inevitably present. So I was just trying to develop a metaphor out of that to explain all of that without being cliche. I wanted to be unique and original, and I found that I feel like numbers are they're things that are memorable. People remember them, and I thought that the 51 plus 49 adding up to a total of 100, and a slight air on the side of happiness and light versus darkness. I also loved the visual that you get from 5149, and my album cover explores that as well, where you have like a 50-50 split. So I thought that the title of the album like gave me like wild possibilities on a visual level, you know, like hot, cold,
Sure.
like white, black, evil versus good, dark versus light, you know. So I hope that it kind of explains how the album
does.
Title came. All right.
So your writing really comes out of your life. It's situations either you personally have experienced or you've recognized around you. And I know
Definitely.
there are other songwriters out there who don't want to write about themselves or write about their lives. But I find that when you do, it becomes more meaningful than somebody else writing a song and then you just performing it.
Agreed.
So how difficult is it to write about those things that just really are digging deep inside of you?
You know, a lot of them, they come when I'm in that mindset. Like if I'm feeling a certain way, I'll just take it to the piano. And it's almost a form of therapy. So it's almost like writing songs, even if it's a sad, maybe message, or the like Vertigo is track four. It's four. Oh my gosh, I think it's 5. Anyway, this is the first ballad on my album. I haven't looked at my track list for a second. But anyways, that one is very much about me in my darkest hour, when I go inside myself and I put up my walls. And so when I wrote that song, I was definitely feeling that way, but writing it got me out of it. So, you know, it can be difficult to go there, but also the music can sort of elevate me after I'm done, or the process of writing. So I would say, yeah, I find it to be very therapeutic. So normally, it's something that's more like involuntary. Like if and it happens when I'm feeling upbeat and happy too. I'll take it to the piano and try and commit that feeling, you know. Usually I write the song on the piano first, although these days more and more I am kind of experimenting on my my music program, and that can sort of lead to the genesis of a song too. Anyway, that's
Absolutely.
another topic.
And I find this interesting because my youngest son is a vocalist. Um, and that was his dream initially. He was going to go out and be a performer, he was going to write his music. He's taken a switch, but he still pursues his music, and he writes from deep inside. And he
Yeah.
has found it to be very therapeutic. Um, and he was just in upstate New York preparing to put together his tracks. And he's been writing now for 10, 15 years. And one of the things I have found from him is that I can see his maturity changing because he puts it into the music, because he thinks about it. And again, wants more happier thoughts than sad thoughts. And sometimes that
Yeah.
music can actually propel him there.
Yeah.
So
It, it
did your
Go
mom know
ahead.
you were working on this album at the time?
So I had quite a few songs under my belt by the time she had passed away. So while she didn't know anything about this particular project, which is basically in a lot of ways dedicated to her, because the last song on the album is called Miss You, which I thought of making it a bonus track and having like a lot of space, but I ended up making it just the final track on the album. So in that way, it's sort of dedicated to her. But she was a huge fan of mine, and so she was always encouraging me to pursue my dreams. She's the one that took me to piano lessons every Tuesday at 3 o'clock and from 8 to 18. And she had some favorite songs that I had written and all of that. So she was very much aware um, of my dreams and supported them. So I do feel like she wouldn't be surprised that I'm doing this. Let's put it that way. But she would be listening to it every day in her car. I know her.
I'm sure she would. And she'll be
Mhm.
listening to it from the heavens above. We all know
I
that as well.
certainly hope so. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. So you mentioned Christopher. So does he have any part in this creation?
He does. So a lot, pretty much all of the songs that involve love really are about him. The other thing I was gonna say earlier is that sometimes for me, um, like This Far Away, which is track 13 on the album, is about sort of a make-believe Chris and me. So it's like a different, sometimes I'll write and it's me, but it's like a different version of me, if that makes any sense. Like
Sure.
I'll write like an alter story of Chris and me where we're separated. And the message of This Far Away is that even if we're separated, space and time can't keep us apart,
Love
and we'll
that.
always find our way back to each other. So even though This Far Away isn't really, in a lot of ways, it's not about me because we're together. It's about sort of that, um, you know, like I said, sort of a alter ego thing.
Absolutely.
And I
Absolutely.
use him a lot as the muse to tell those stories, which is kind of fun. But then it's just concrete, like straight up about him. Like there's a song on the album called I Can See Us, which is my Goodbye New York City song, and it's track 12. And that is literally about my 18 years in New York City and then meeting him and seeing a completely different skyline and taking him and my car and my cats and moving down to paradise and watching the city lights fade away. And it was so weird when we left. We left in New York City on September 30th, 2020, and we happened to leave at night so that we would arrive in Florida in the daytime. And it was so weird because normally I would have thought we would have left like super early in the morning. Like you get
Sure.
up at 6 and you go, but we didn't. We left at 8 o'clock and we literally listened to my song. The album wasn't out yet, but the song was done. And we listened to that song as the city lights like faded away in the distance. So it was like wildly autobiographical.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
Yeah.
what drew you to Florida? I mean, everything happens in New York.
Yeah, I know. It's part of my rebellion.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't enough of the industry. If I'm still here, if you want me, I'm here. That's how I feel about New York City.
Uh,
Um, I oh my gosh, I just got sidetracked. What was your question?
what brought you to Florida? I
Oh,
mean,
what brought me to
yeah,
Florida?
yeah.
Right. So there was a desire to come here before the pandemic, for sure. Chris's family is all here. So there's
Okay.
that. And me not having my mom, I still have my brother and my sister and my dad. And I love them very much, but I was never going to move back to Massachusetts. So that was never going to happen. So for me, the difference between being in Florida and visiting Mass and New York City, I mean, yes, New York is closer, but like when all is said and done, to me, it makes no difference. I can still visit them. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's a
Yep.
4 hour drive or a 4 hour plane situation. So I was all about moving to Florida and starting a new chapter with him. And he very much has a similar relationship to the one I had with my mom. And I really do want to like encourage him to spend every minute he can with her. So plus Florida, while it's totally not perfect, is beautiful. The weather is like amazing. So you know, and I need a lot of space. I'm also a visual artist, you can see
I
all this
noticed.
stuff.
Yep. Yep.
um, and I honestly, I had it up to here with the like apartment living. It
Yeah.
just I did it for so long. I mean, 18 years
It's
is
a
like
long
not
time.
for
Yeah.
nothing. That's a
Right.
long time.
Yeah.
So I just felt like, and then with the pandemic and doing lockdown in the apartment, it was just time to get out. Life is too short. I'm not doing that forever.
Well,
That
and
was it.
yeah, and I hope our listeners can hear this because life is short. And if we can create those choices and not, we can't always, as we know, but if you can make those changes so that it makes your life just a little bit better, we need to do that. Um,
Yep.
I've always said that, wintertime in the Northeast just totally depresses me. But I've lived in the Northeast my whole life. Okay. So,
And the Northeast is
yeah,
great.
well, it's great except in the winter with the snow and the ice and everything.
That gets
But
really rough. Yeah.
one of the things I did last year, due to the pandemic, I just chose every morning to look out the window and see sunshine, even when it was gray and cloudy and it getting dark at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I knew where that sun was and I would visualize it if nothing else. Um,
Well,
and yeah, it doesn't always work, but when it does, it's marvelous.
that's
You
like the age-old expression, fake it till you make it.
you
It
got it.
like basically applies to exactly what you're talking about. It's not just like being successful in like a job. It's like if you like sometimes if I'm like in a really bad mood, I will just at work maybe even, I will literally just fake happy almost to the point where I like want to like punch myself in the face. But then like
I
eventually
know.
it kind of like works.
Yeah,
So it's mind over matter for sure,
you are
you
absolutely
know.
correct. Well,
And
how
also,
yeah.
oh, I'm
Go no,
sorry.
go
I
ahead.
was just
Finish.
well, no, I was just gonna say that it's almost like if you can it's the same as you looking out the window and seeing sunshine, is if you could just wake up and be grateful for one thing or two things,
Absolutely.
little things. They add up to a lot at the end of the day. And you know that like we have so much more than so many people around the world. We don't even realize because it's, the human condition is to just naturally take what you have for granted because it's your everyday. How could you not, right? So I think when we can broaden our perspective, it's really helpful. And my song Great Adventure, which is track 4, Vertigo's 5, yeah, is all about um, taking on life's challenges and the great parts and the celebrations and the roadblocks and turning it into a great adventure. Like, wow, life is gonna throw you curveballs and you got to go with it. And um, in the blink of an eye, you're gonna be older, so you have to just celebrate what you have because you think it's bad now. How about when you feel like this in your 90s? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You don't, yeah. So, it's not, and it's so easy to preach, and I'm not trying to be like patronizing either, because like it can be annoying when you're in a down, dark place to hear somebody be like, just wake up and be grateful for something, but
Well,
it is kind of the truth.
but it's nice that you can help guide others through your music, even through your experiences. And that's why our podcasts are so important because w- we're not here to preach. We know that when you're feeling at the darkest, nobody can say anything to you that's really going to snap you out of it. And nobody should be able to because you need to experience it. But what I've gotten from you is you've experienced, and from your experiences, you've learned to find the gratitude, even if it's in the little things, even if it's, you know what, I just woke up in a warm bed with a roof over my head today. Um, maybe your apartment in New York was small and tiny, but you had a
But it
roof
was
over your head.
cozy.
Yep,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
of course. And I'm not here to like, dump on my apartment in New York, because it really was like there's so much of that experience that shaped me. Like,
Sure.
it gave me the appreciation for my big townhouse in Florida, or
Absolutely.
whatever. Yeah, so
So, how can people find you and find your album?
thank you. Great question. So it's pretty easy. When it comes to my music, you can go on any of the streaming services. My name is Michael Lazar, Lazar. And the album is 5149. It's actually 51/49. And that'll take you to the music. If you want to see my artistic creations, I do a lot of like merging of my art and my music into this kind of visual audio extravaganza. And you can see that on Instagram. That's my main place where I experiment with my art and my music together. So that's Art by Lazar, ArtByLazar. And the only other thing that you'd want to know is my website, because that has kind of everything. And that's michaellazarmusic.com. So two L's, michaellazarmusic.com.
And that is very easy. And we will have all that in the show notes. So nobody has an excuse not to find you. And when that
I'm
next
so
album,
grateful.
when the next album comes out, we want to talk about it and, you know, see the changes in your life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I can't wait to tune in to all your podcasts moving forward. I'm so grateful to be on your roster.
Thank you. Have a great
Yeah,
day,
no problem.
Michael.
Thank you.
But
You too, Karen.
bye bye now.
Bye.